Welcome to today's deep dive. We're going to be talking about something that seems like it's everywhere these days, generative AI. But we're not just talking about the idea of it. We're really diving deep into how it's being used by, folks like us, people who work in software, specifically developer test engineers.
Yeah, it really is amazing to see how this technology is changing the game for testing.
And when we say changing the game, we're talking about making things faster, more efficient, and maybe even a little more fun. What do you think?
I think fun is definitely on the table. It's not about replacing human testers. It's about giving them these like AI superpowers to do their jobs even better. Imagine having an assistant who can like just dream up hundreds of different test cases just like that, or even predict those really nasty bugs before they even have a chance to, rear their ugly heads.
Okay, I got to admit, when I was prepping for this deep dive, some of this stuff really blew my mind. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do want to take a step back and make sure we're all starting on the same page, right?
Right.
So we're assuming you already know the basics of software testing,
Hmm.
but you might not be, an AI expert.
Totally.
So before we talk about how generative AI is being used in testing, maybe let's just break down what generative AI actually is.
Absolutely. So, at its most basic level, generative AI is all about patterns. You feed an AI system a ton of data, and that data can be anything, lines of code, test scripts, you name it.
Right.
And the AI, it studies that data, learns the patterns hidden within it, and then it can use those patterns to actually create something totally new.
So it's like if I feed an AI all the test cases for, say, a login page,
Yeah.
it can then use that information to generate a whole bunch of new test scenarios I might not have even thought of.
Exactly. And the really cool part is that these new scenarios aren't just random. They're based on the patterns the AI has learned from, maybe even millions of lines of code and test scripts.
So it's like having an army of interns generating test cases,
Yeah.
but without all the office distractions and the existential dread.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, these AI models are getting really good at understanding, the nuances of different testing environments and coding languages. They can tailor those test cases to your specific needs, which is amazing.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. No more spending hours and hours manually trying to come up with every single input or
Yeah.
user action, which actually reminds me of the stuff I was reading mentioned some specific tools, actual platforms that developer test engineers are using out there in the real world.
Yeah.
One that caught my eye was OpenAI. I think most people have at least heard of it by now.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Can you tell us a little more about it, like what it is, how it works?
Yeah, so OpenAI is a great example of, generative AI being used in a really practical way. Like you can literally just type in a simple prompt like generate test cases for an online shopping cart, for example. And boom, it'll churn out like a whole laundry list of different test scenarios, adding items to the cart, changing quantities, trying different discount codes, all that good stuff.
Okay, so that sounds pretty straightforward. But how does it actually work on the back end? What kind of input or data does it need to actually make that happen?
Well, OpenAI and a lot of these generative AI tools, they're trained on these massive, massive data sets of, code and test scripts. Like, think mountains of data, way more than any human could ever process in a lifetime.
Right.
And this allows the AI to really learn those underlying patterns and rules of, how software is built. It's kind of like, I don't know if this analogy works, but imagine showing an AI every single episode of a TV show.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
So it watches all these episodes, learns the characters, the plot lines, and then it can start to predict what might happen next, right? Or even write its own scenes based on everything it's learned.
Right. So it's not just mimicking what it's seen before, but it's actually internalizing those rules and then using them to create something new.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So that's super interesting, but it also sounds pretty, complex. Do I need to be like a coding whiz kid to actually use these tools?
Not at all. A lot of these tools, OpenAI included, they're designed to work with the testing frameworks that developer test engineers are already using. So whether you're working with Selenium or Cypress or something else, you can kind of plug these AI tools right in, and they just add this whole extra layer of intelligence on top.
Okay, so you're not starting from scratch. You're kind of adding this AI superpower
Yeah.
to your existing toolkit. I like it.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is where things start to get really, really interesting. We're kind of stepping into the future here. One of the things that just absolutely, blew my mind was this idea of self-healing tests.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that AI can now actually like fix tests when they break? What is this
Yeah.
sorcery?
Yeah, no, it's one of the most exciting things happening in testing right now. And it's not some far off thing, it's actually happening.
Wow.
So think about it, like, your team is rushing to get a new feature out the door and suddenly bam, a UI update throws everything off, a button gets moved, a field gets renamed, whatever.
Right. And then all of a sudden you've got 50 broken tests.
Exactly. And normally you'd have to go in and manually fix every single one of those broken scripts. But with self-healing, the AI can actually detect those changes, those little breaks, and just fix them automatically so you don't have to waste time, fixing things that the machine can already handle.
So instead of spending hours or maybe even like days fixing all those little broken tests,
Mhm.
I can focus on, the more creative or complex aspects of my job.
Exactly. It frees up a ton of time and mental energy,
Yeah.
so you can really focus on those things that actually require, like, human ingenuity and problem-solving skills.
So it's like having this like AI assistant who's constantly monitoring your tests, making sure everything's running smoothly in the background while you get to be the architect of this amazing software experience.
I like that, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
So from what I've seen, it's like AI is popping up everywhere in the testing world these days.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's not just about, generating test cases or fixing those broken scripts anymore. We're talking about AI being used to actually create synthetic test data.
Right.
It's being used to try to predict defects before they even happen, which sounds kind of crazy. And it's even being used to assist with exploratory testing, which
Hmm.
to me at least has always felt like a very human-centered task.
Right, definitely.
So before we go any further, can you give an example of how AI is actually